A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Christian ministries in the domestic violence space are working to address the growing needs across communities. Our special guest today is a 20-year veteran working in family and domestic violence. Matt Boulton leads the Circuit Breaker program. He's best known as the author of Changing Tools and the Circuit Breaker program. He specializes in domestic violence cases and working with perpetrators. He also produced a documentary for the Joint Church's Domestic Violence Prevention Project called Not in My Church, and it has been widely used as a training resource for clergy. And Matt Boulton, I'd like you to welcome you to the studios today here at Vision on 2020.
Thanks very much, Andrew. It's good to be back here again.
Well, it's always good to have good-looking people like you, Matt, because it gives all of us hope that there's still hope for us. But, Matt, we are talking about a very serious topic today. Domestic violence is a big issue in Australia, and it's a growing issue in Australia. Can you give us some stats and just how prevalent is domestic violence in Australia today?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. There's probably a lot of people thinking to themselves, it seems like we see a domestic homicide every week. It seems like every week we're seeing a story like this. And the fact is we are, and we have been for quite a long time. In Australia, we've been losing one woman per week as a result of domestic homicides or a murder by a current or former partner. And Queensland's actual domestic violence homicides have just gone up 50% last year, which is
really so. The
alarming.
Trend is up. It's
Yeah,
not.
it's
It's not
definitely up.
static. It's actually a growing problem.
No, it's been a problem that's been going up since COVID, since lockdowns. But before that, we already had a national epidemic. We already had 1 in 4 women from the age of 15 upwards that would experience abuse from a current or former partner. We had police being called to a domestic violence incident every 2 minutes.
Is that Queensland, is it?
That's national.
Oh, that's national.
National figure. Yeah. So we really have a problem. You know, if there was a woman losing her life every week from a toaster, that toaster would certainly be off the market, and we'd be asking some questions. So unfortunately, we know that the trends during COVID lockdowns increased. There was hard data on that. So Google searches for domestic violence help were going up 75%. There were 75% increases in frontline services being requested for help. And the figures that really don't lie were hospital admissions in emergency rooms for domestic violence, and they were up 65%. And we don't really seem to have seen these figures coming downwards.
Yeah, so because obviously a counter-argument would be, forgetting the deaths and the serious assaults that are being hospitalised, a counter-argument would be years ago people just put up with this. They didn't tell anyone. It wasn't reported. And now, thanks to government initiatives and I think thanks to more community awareness, I think people are obviously more inclined to report. But yeah, like you said, if those deaths are increasing and the hospitalisations are increasing, this is really sad. This is really tragic that this is a major problem, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. And I think that's the answer to that, Andrew, that a lot of people do think that it's just about us being a bit more open about the subject, and that's a great thing. But yeah, those stats don't lie, and the hospital admissions. So it's a sad situation that we're in, and it does appear to be getting worse.
Yeah, Matt, what is the government doing about this? And let's do federal and state. You are based in Queensland. Let's start with the federal government. What is the federal government of Australia trying to do about this?
Well, the federal government in 2022, the Labor government, Ministers Amanda Rishworth and Katie Gallagher announced what they called an ambitious national plan on family violence, and with the ambitious goal to end domestic violence within one generation. So you'd have to, you certainly can't argue that that's ambitious.
When was that announced?
That was October of 2022.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago.
So I was excited about that. Not really, but I did look into it straight away, and I think from the first paragraph of that plan, I could see it was destined to failure. Once again, it's another policy doing the same old that's been failing, and the focus of that plan was very much on in their own words, social, cultural, political and economic factors contributing, which is not really where I believe the solution is.
Well, it's idealism, isn't it?
That's right.
I mean, it's like communism. Communism is a great idea. You know, let's just level the playing field. Let's all work hard each day, get paid the same amount. There's no rich, there's no poor. It all sounds good, but it doesn't work, does it? Because there's no actual practical steps to create that utopia that they think they're going to bring in. And statements like that, I will abolish it within one generation. It's very easy for a politician to say that because in one generation, they'll no longer be in office and they're no longer accountable for their statements. And then they'll say, oh, well, we tried.
That's it.
It's just idealism because, if you're going to say that, you got to tell us how we're going to achieve that. And so repeat those key words you said before. They said the key reasons are?
Well, they believe that by focusing on social, cultural, political and economic factors, that's really where the solution's going to come.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, Andrew, I think, and this is something that we saw during COVID lockdowns, is that sometimes I like to go down to the river, and if I go down at low tide, I'll see rocks that have been there the whole time, but they're only revealed at low tide. And I think that's what we saw with COVID lockdowns, that people were saying, COVID lockdowns are causing domestic violence. No, they don't cause domestic violence. Alcohol doesn't cause domestic violence. And none of these social factors cause domestic violence. The social pressures just reveal the problems that have been there all along. And, people like you and me, we're under the same pressures. And we're not using that as an excuse to abuse people. So, I think that there's a deeper problem that's not going to be legislated out of fashion. It's...
So just repeat those again. We had economic, we had social. What were the other factors they claimed were the key contributors?
Social, cultural, political and economic factors. And
political? I mean, hello. What's politics got to do with people committing domestic violence in their homes? It's got nothing to do with it.
We could talk about cause and effect with this, though, because if they're saying that these things are the cause of domestic abuse, I would say no, actually domestic violence is the cause of many of those issues. So, for instance, economically, even as far back as 2016, KPMG did an audit on the real cost of domestic violence to the Australian economy at $6 billion. That was back then.
Whoa, $6 billion.
$6 billion a year across all of the many areas of spending, and then the human cost of domestic violence, of course, is much greater than money. But homelessness, a lot of people would say, the homelessness problem, the housing problem is causing domestic violence, whereas actually, right back in the early around about 2013, the Drug and Alcohol Council of Australia released their figures that they believed that 75% of homelessness was actually the result of domestic violence, either directly or indirectly. So
it's a consequence, homelessness. It's not a cause.
That's right. Yeah. So we have to look in both directions, but
based upon that, Matt, the federal government, to me, doesn't have an answer. Would that be fair to say?
I think they don't have an answer, but it's worse than that. And the real danger, I think, here is that if we misdiagnose the sickness, we will prescribe the wrong remedy. And when we do that, people die. And that's what we're seeing every week. The other downside of that is that if we prescribe the wrong remedy, if we don't really understand the problem, then people don't get the right remedy, and that there might be other solutions out there that are not getting that funding or getting that attention.
And we are going to open up the talkback line shortly, and I want to put it out there to our listeners. You may have a comment, you might have a query, you might have a question to ask Matt. Matt has worked in this space for 20 years. He leads a program called the Circuit Breaker Program. He's the best... he's the author of the book Changing Tools. That's what he's best known for, and also for this Circuit Breaker Program. So we want to hear your thoughts on this topic. Domestic violence is a huge problem in Australia. You might have an experience you want to share or a question you want to ask Matt. And Matt, before we open up the talk lines, can I ask you, if it's possible really quickly, what do you think the key issue is here? What is the key driver behind this?
I think we can't legislate our way out of this problem. At the end of the day, there's only one group of people that can end domestic violence, and it's not government, it's not police, it's not corrections, it's not victims, it's the ones doing the abuse. And there are many of those people that are seeking change if we can engage with them. But what I tell people everywhere is we can never hope to end domestic violence unless we're engaging the ones doing the violence in some kind of a process of change. Anything else we're doing is just going to be moving the same problem around.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.